Okay, so now we're actually going to use the factor theorem. Of course, it says to use synthetic division, but you notice it says to use the result to find all zeros. Of course, we talked about that in the previous lesson. If you remember, your zeros or your solutions can also be called roots, but like when you look at them on your graph, the real ones are also your x-intercepts. Okay, so to get started, of course, this is what I mentioned a while ago. Since it's given to me as a binomial, I've got to change the sign of this. So when I set it up, I'm going to have positive 3 in the front. And then from my polynomial, I've got all my terms this time. So 2, negative 3, negative 11, positive 6. Okay, so go through your synthetic division. And you notice this time you get a remainder of 0, okay, which you're supposed to. This is what your factor theorem is telling you, okay? And that when you're asked to find zeros, that's what you got to have. It's got to divide it evenly. Now it says use the result to find all zeros. Okay, so remember your power drops down 1. So like this was the third power, so this represents a second degree. So I have 2x squared plus 3x minus 2. Now when you get it down to a second power quadratic, you can check to see if it will factor, or you can use your quadratic formula. And I don't know for sure what this does, so let's see if we can get it to factor. Yes, it does factor. So this gives me positive 4. This gives me negative 1. So negative 4 plus a 4 plus a negative 1 gives me my positive 3. Okay, so now if I solve each of these factors, so that means that my zeros, of course the 3 that I found because of the x minus 3, and then I found the 1/2, and I found the negative 2. So there's the remaining zeros. Now another thing, if you remember, whatever the degree is, that's how many answers you'll have, or how many zeros you'll have. So since I have an exponent of 3, so I've ended up with 3 answers. Okay, next one. Okay, just the problem's just stated a little bit different, but it's basically telling you exactly the same thing. You know that negative 1/2 is one of your zeros. Now, you don't change the sign of it this time, so it doesn't give it to you as x minus or x plus. So if they just go ahead and give you the number, then keep the sign the way that it is. So I'm going to set negative 1/2 up out front. And then I have 2, negative 5, positive 1, positive 2. Okay, so when I multiply negative 1/2 times 2, I get negative 1. Add, I get negative 6. Negative 1/2 times negative 6 gives me positive 3. Add, I get 4. Negative 1/2 times 4 is negative 2. There's my remainder of 0. Okay, but again, you're going to now use that to find the other zeros. Okay, so let's see if this one will factor for us. So I have 2x squared minus 6x plus 4. Now you do have a greatest common factor of 2, so I'm going to take that out just so my numbers will be smaller. Okay, now let's factor. So x squared would be x times x, 2 times 1, both of them minuses this time. So x minus 2 equals 0 will give me x equal positive 2. X minus 1 equals 0 will give me x equal positive 1. Now since my greatest common factor was just a value, there's not anything to get from that as far as an answer. So my zeros, the negative 1/2, positive 2, and positive 1.